You are listening to the Bold Dreams Held Loosely podcast hosted by myself, Taryn Watts, and my colleague and dear friend, Michelle. We believe that the quality of the conversations you're inside of shapes the quality of your life. Whether that's a conversation you're having with others, listening in on, or contemplating within yourself, what you think about and where you direct your energy matters. At the Mind Rebel Academy, we train and support change makers to step into their life's work as world-class coaches and leaders. After mentoring hundreds of people from around the world, what we've come to realize is that the most extraordinary coaches and leaders have one thing in common, and this is that they are wildly devoted to living deeply examined lives. After all, you can only go as deep with another as you're willing to go within yourself. And this podcast is just that. Michelle and I, two coaches and leaders, having raw, honest, very human conversations that are expanding our minds, opening us up to new possibilities, and keeping us steadfastly committed and focused to walking our path towards our deepest yearnings and greatest visions. And our intention is that these conversations do the same for you. So get comfy and settle in. And as always, you're invited to take what's for you and gently leave the rest. Enjoy. Okay. So today we're going to talk all about vocation. Let's start this conversation with one quote and one excerpt from a really awesome book that you and I both love about vocation, just to kind of set the stage for this whole conversation. So the first quote that I wanted to read is from Frederick Buechner, and he has this definition of vocation that I think is really, really powerful. So he defines vocation as the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. And then Parker J. Palmer, who wrote a book called The Courage to Teach, built on that quote. And I'm going to read the excerpt out of his book, A Courage to Teach. So he says, in a culture that sometimes equates work with suffering, it is revolutionary to suggest that the best inward sign of vocation is deep gladness. Revolutionary, but true. If a work is mine to do, it will make me glad over the long haul, despite the difficult days. Even the difficult days will ultimately gladden me because they possess the kinds of problems that can help me to grow in a work if it is truly mine. If a work does not gladden me in these ways, I need to consider laying it down. When I devote myself to something that does not flow from my identity, that is not integral to my nature, I am most likely deepening the world's hunger rather than helping to alleviate it.
That I've heard, that made me feel so soft and relieved inside, rehearing that excerpt. And it's funny because when I heard it that time, so our conversation today is about vocation, and I hear it in vocation, but I also this time heard it about every little bit of work we have to do for ourselves, like our personal growth, whatever work we have to do in this life. I heard it applying to that as well. Like, if it is our work to do, we'll know it, like the work will make us glad. The work we have to do can't come from somebody else. It can't come from somebody else telling us we have to do the work. It can't come from unsolicited feedback. That can't be what prompts the work. It has to be because of, as in vocation, so as in our inner work, it has to come from our inner gladness to do that. That feels so freeing and liberating in a world that would delight in pointing out all of the flaws and areas of work,
Yeah. So Michelle, what does vocation mean to you? If you were to have your own definition, what does vocation mean to you?
You're asking me the hardest question, and I do not know the answer. And even though we've been talking about this so much, and I know I've known we were going to have this conversation, and I deeply desire to know the answer. What does vocation mean to me? I still have, I think, too many questions about what vocation means to me to give a clear answer. So I love, the quote, vocation is where my gladness meets the world's hunger. I think that is so beautiful, and I want that to be what vocation means to me. That it's like
Mm-hmm.
this like idea that I find so beautiful. It's like the sun, and I want to lean toward it and bask in that. That's what I want to be what it means to me. And I have these little questions that are blocking me from fully soaking in the beauty of that warmth and that light. And I think the biggest question, I have a couple questions, but one of the biggest questions that obscure um fully embracing that quote, that idea is, are do all vocations inherently make you money? Are all, like, if your vocation is where your gladness meets the world's hunger, is that also the place where you also receive, like, if that's truly your work in the world and the most joyful work you could do in the world, does that mean that's the place in which you exchange your energy for, like, other value? Like, is that do you automatically get to, not automatically, but can that translate into your work in the world that sustains you and
Mm-hmm.
feeds you and keeps a roof over your head? Um, do those things go together? Is there ever a time where your vocation doesn't pay you, doesn't support you? I'm really wrestling with that. Like, sometimes do those two things have to be separate? Or is there always a way if it's your true vocation? Will the universe always find a way to support you if it's your true vocation? I'm really wrestling with that. Um, and the other piece that I am a little bit wrestling with is, it sounds so beautiful and simple, like where your gladness meets the world. It's like the gladness piece. So it sounds really simple, like I should, if I just tap into what makes me most glad and most expressed and most fulfilled, that should be a clue. But I guess the other question is, how do I even frame this question? Is it something that, is it perhaps simpler than I realize? And it's that thing that I have access to right now? Or are there things I have to surrender and dig through to find a different deep gladness that the universe and the world want for me, so, like, discerning, is there anything else to it? Could it be as simple as picking, just, I guess, releasing any resistance I have towards allowing myself to just embrace what makes me glad and lean in? Could it be as simple as that? Or do I have more discovery to do to find something that I didn't know would make me glad? Like, do I have
Mm-hmm.
to, I don't want it. I have a bad, I think I have a pattern that doesn't serve me, of feeling like there's always more work to
Mm-hmm.
do. What if I have to get better and clearer and do more figuring out to find the truth? But I'm, like, really getting a little tired of that one. I'm getting real tired, and I just, I yearn to surrender. So I don't want that to be a question anymore, but I think I'm still wrestling a little bit with it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I know right now.
I think that So this question of, okay, so here's how I think about vocation. So in coaching, we have a tool called the Wheel of Life. So for anyone listening to this who doesn't know what the Wheel of Life is, you can even just Google Wheel of Life and you'll see all sorts of Wheel of Lives. But essentially the Wheel of Life represents all the different outlets in your life. I call them outlets, but all the different sections of your life. So you've got a section or an outlet for vocation. You've got an outlet for a significant relationship, if that's relevant to you. You've got a section for friendships, for family, for community, for health and wellness, for spirituality, for, I mean, you could have as many outlets as you want. You really get to create what outlets are relevant for you, but there's some great templates online that you could look at. But I look at it from, okay, so if for me, and I look at my own wheel of life, and I've got all these different outlets, and some are more important than others in different seasons of my life. But I've got this outlet of, one outlet is motherhood. I've got an outlet of marriage. I've got an outlet of friendships, wealth. One outlet is wealth and abundance, spirituality, and then vocation. I probably didn't name all of them, but you get the gist. And we've talked about this before on podcasts, and we talk about this a lot, especially in part one of the coach training. But we talk about purpose and what if our purpose is not to go out and do something spectacular with our vocation or be the best mother we could be? Or what if our purpose was actually not outside of us, but it was flipped inward? What if our purpose in this lifetime was to simply fully self-express through each of these outlets? And so that looks different in each of these outlets, depending on what the outlet means to us. And we get to decide what it means to us. And so when I think about vocation is an outlet for me to fully experience my most authentic self. And when I've been in jobs or vocations that have not felt good, it's just simply because there wasn't space for me to fully self-express. There wasn't space for me. It was an incompatible outlet. And sometimes I think that we can do some clearing of the outlet and healing of the outlet to fully self-express, and other times is just the wrong outlet, and we have to go create our own outlets. And that's essentially what I did in entrepreneurship. I realized that corporate life is not going to give me give me personally an opportunity to experience myself as a full creator. As much as entrepreneurship is like it's my kryptonite, it like brings me to my knees, but it's also an incredible outlet for me to be the most creative being I could possibly be. And so if that's our purpose, and if that's actually what makes us glad, is the full self-expression of who we are through our outlet of vocation, and the full self-expression of who we are is constantly changing and evolving, so that outlet should never remain static. It's always going to change. And so I think there's this continuous question to ask ourselves, like, what do we want to experience in this outlet of our life? Just like, what do I want to experience in the outlet of motherhood? That's going to be different. When my kids were babies, it was very different than, my kids are 8 and 10 today. It looks different. The full expression of motherhood for me looks different. So I like to look at it from that inside out perspective. Where I think it gets complicated and convoluted is that on the wheel of life, for me personally, and I think this is true for many people, vocation and wealth and abundance are connected, are are deeply connected. I look at my parents, and my parents are my best friends, and they're like my heroes. I just like adore my parents, and I look at their life, and they are retired. Oh, so lovely. They're retired, and they are, they've been able to financially set themselves up for retirement. And they are now, like, when I think about the most free expression of vocation, I think of them. My mom just did her yoga teacher training, not because she wants to be a yoga teacher, because she just wanted to learn how to do the moves a little deeper and understand the anatomy and the proper formations, and she's decided, after that, the next area that she wanted to go into, she's now volunteering at the St. Mary's House, which is a home or a not-for-profit in Ottawa that helps single moms with when they're having their babies, and she's going to be tutoring them and helping them. And anyways, it's just like, wow. And the joy these things bring her in the capacity that she has, and she gets to determine how much of that she wants to do. I look at that, and I look at some of the things my dad has done, and oh my gosh, that freedom for it not to be attached to income, I think it becomes easier to ask yourself, what makes me glad? I remember you and I having this conversation over Voxer one day, and you're like, what makes me glad today? I went into my forest and I started trimming branches, and I was so glad. It's like when vocation gets intertangled with how we support ourselves and how we support our families, it brings some funky energy and some confusing energy to the mix.
So, in your opinion, what's my question? So, are you saying that perhaps vocation and wealth and abundance, the way you make your money, they might not always necessarily inherently go hand in hand in even the ideal circumstance, like in the highest expression of someone's life, perhaps there isn't a given that those two things go hand in hand.
Yeah, I do. I think that there isn't a given. I think it can go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And I think it also doesn't have to go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And that's confusing.
It is.
Because we only have so much energy to expend in a day, and we need money to survive and to live. Yeah, I think that actually, in contemplating vocation and contemplating what the fullest self-expression of vocation looks like for me, what it's actually surfaced is all my limiting money beliefs. Because for me, vocation and wealth and abundance do go hand in hand. It's the way I do support myself. And it's not that I don't know what makes me glad. I know what makes me glad. It's that I've got all sorts of corners to look at around the wealth and abundance piece that's intertangled with the vocation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I find that idea that these two things, vocation, wealth, and abundance, they have a relationship, and sometimes they are like just absolutely tied. But the idea that perhaps they aren't always tied in that sort of, way, that like a marriage of, yes, these are one, these outlets are kind of one and the same. It's both liberating and frustrating, or like I feel resistance at the same, I feel liberation and resistance to that at the same time. One, it's liberating because, one, just like in the way you described your parents, when you take money out of it, when you take all your money blocks, limiting beliefs about your worth and value and, your ability to receive, when you take that all away and you just look at the purest idea of vocation, of like where your gladness meets the world's hunger. Oh, it's such an expansive feeling, and things become so clear to me. I have no questions.
Right.
I don't have any
No.
questions. And then, so there's so much liberation there, so much clarity there. But then when I move back to this piece of then like money and generating money in a way that isn't, so then that means I'm pouring energy somewhere that doesn't light me up to the level that my vocation does. And I resent that. I resent the
The whole
moments.
system.
uh and so there's this question of like, oh, it's like I almost feel like a little kid being like, no, if I only have this much amount of energy in life, I don't want it to work that way, that sometimes I'm putting energy doing here instead of when I said that to you, like I went into my woods and that's not just like a one-off. I swear to God, when I am out in the woods and I am like pruning the dead branches off of trees or removing the dead trees from the path and kind of, doing all of that work and tidying things up, I feel like I'm like, I am doing God's work on earth right now. And I feel like it's my legacy. And I'm like, I will look back on every moment that I spent doing this and feel like it was a life, spent really well. And so it's like, yeah, it's not a one-off. It's like the more time goes by, the more clearer that becomes. That's not the only thing. There's a few other things like that. Um, but I really wrestle with, then what does this mean then? Then what does, then what, then how, then what does it look like to become actually self-expressed in the way I make money? What does that mean then?
Do you want vocation and like the outlet of vocation and the outlet of wealth and abundance to be interconnected?
It's such a good question, because on one level, yes, it feels like it would just, it would transform the concept of work for me. I have a real push-pull with the concept of work. And if my work was, it feels like, yeah, on the one hand, yes. On the other hand, I feel like there's a purity of being in the woods that I love, and I would never want to taint it. And I don't actually think that money or wealth inherently or prosperity inherently taints anything. But I feel so protective of my expression of like how I treat the land, how I treat my chickens, how I tend to my gardens, how I, interact with the trees. I feel so protective over it that I don't want to color what I'm doing with any worries about money or any like, how you have to like, how like for you, you're constantly having to discern all these things of like what's in the highest alignment and balance it, what makes business sense. And it's like you have to pour so much energy constantly into something that's more complicated. And so when I go out into the woods, it's very simple and uncomplicated, and it's so pure and it's so free. And it's almost like you have this harder job in this way. So I'm saying on the one hand, I want them to go together, but when I look at you and I see the complicated nature of what you have to discern, I guess there is a trade-off there. Like,
Yeah.
gosh, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if the tending to the land, tending to your chickens, I wonder if that's something other than vocation. I wonder if
Hmm.
that's an outlet of your life that's actually something other than vocation.
Hmm. Maybe like that's my like there's a sometimes uh, like there's all sorts of I'm sure there people could consider a million different slices of the pie in the wheel of life, right?
Mhm.
Like I'm sure there's a million ideas. Sometimes I almost feel like an area of the pie I want to add in is just like humaning.
Mhm.
Like I don't even know what it means, but it's like it's something so basic. It's like um I don't even know what to put it other than humaning, which means like I have a relationship to myself and the earth, and I have
Yeah.
to keep myself alive, and I have to interact with the world as it is manifest, but in the most basic
Yeah, I
way,
hear
almost
you.
in like an animalistic way, like the animal of being a human. I could see an argument for, you know, humaning, just like I like when I walk down the path,
Mhm.
sometimes I think that like, oh, this is my church. This is where I most feel
Mhm.
God. This is where I most feel my soul, spirit. This is where I feel like and also most like pure and like I'm an animal. I'm just a human. I'm, if I feel so humbled. So like on the one hand, I feel so expansive and connected to God. On the other hand, I feel so small and humble and like and like insignificant in the most beautiful type of way. And just same with tending to the chickens. And it's just like it's almost like humaning to me. It's so basic. So maybe you're right. Maybe that's my humaning outlet.
And okay, so the image I'm getting is the wheel of life, which is again this big circle with all the different slices of the pie, of all your outlets. But at the very center of the circle is you. It's almost like a circle within the circle, it's
Mm.
you. It's the self. It's you. And everything you're just describing feels like that's your center.
Hmm.
That is your core, that is your center.
Oh, I like that. It's funny because that is um that is always what feels most important to me. My center, all those things I just described, and I don't want any
Yeah.
other outlet around it to ever compromise that core. And that's sometimes why it maybe feels I don't know why I am confusing. It's funny that I would confuse vocation with what feels most important to me. That's interesting. Like myself. I'm tying something together there. Like, I don't know. Am I making sense?
Yeah. I think you're like untangling something.
Yeah. Maybe it's a leftover idea of like, I wholeheartedly believe this definition of, okay, what if our purpose is our self-expression in all of these outlets instead of one purpose,
Mhm.
because like I wholeheartedly agree, believe that. But when I was young, I remember laying in bed being like, what's my purpose? And I really did equate it with what am I going to do out in the world? So maybe there is just like a leftover tangle inside of me that even though I don't believe it, it's still a little tangled. Like the most important thing I'll do, my purpose will be connected to that area of vocation. What if it's just like a leftover tangle there?
Mhm. And I mean, the way our society is set up, like it makes perfect sense that that's like really tangled
Yeah.
for most of us. we spend, what is it, 1/3 of our lives typically at work. Like that is the average human spends 1/3 of their lives at work.
Don't like that.
And that's not include, like that includes sleeping time.
Wow.
You know, that's wild.
Yeah, I don't like that balance. That's not cool to me.
It's actually, it doesn't even feel natural.
No, it infringes on the core, the me, the self, and nothing can do that. Not vocation, not motherhood, not anything.
Right.
I don't want anything to infringe on this core of like basic humaning and me. Nothing can, there is nothing worth compromising that core for me. Nothing.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Take out money.
Okay.
Imagine that you live in a world where your needs are met. You are, money is not an issue. You're taken care of financially. Money, you do not work for money. Vocation does not equal money. You're not even thinking about that. What would you do?
This. I'll do this with you. Yeah. What else would I do? A lot comes down to expressing, I think. Expressing. Yeah, expressing. So expressing out into the world in multiple ways. And I really like the image of things going out of me, but not coming back in. And all sorts of ideas come to mind, but like creations, expressions, things coming out. And yeah, I think yeah.
And what do you mean not coming back in?
So so I am connecting with you. We are connecting. You're another human, and we're having an energy exchange. Your energy is coming in, mine's going out to you. But this conversation, if anyone listens, it's going out to them, but their energy isn't actually like coming back to me. I'm quiet. I get some solitude, and I get to hear myself, and I'm not having like 100 if there's 100 listeners, I'm not actually having 100 interactions. If I write a book, I pour my words onto pages and I send it out, and everyone can read it, but everyone who read it I don't have like an interaction with.
Spoken by a true introvert.
Yeah. And I think in order to I think the type of expressing and creating, or if I create if we're working together on creating something like a program or a teaching or a training or something, create it with whatever team we create it, and then we put it out to the world. I have a very finite very finite bandwidth for energy exchange with others. And maybe that's also why I like love being alone in the woods, right? There's such solitude and sanctuary, and I can feel peaceful. And so much about vocation, not everyone, there's like lots of jobs where you sit alone behind a computer and you don't interact, but so many vocations have a lot of interaction, like serving other people. And I think for me, one thing I'm realizing is that in order for something to be sustainable and to not burn out, I need to protect my solitude and the energy coming in. I need to protect it. I was going to say fiercely, but it's not fiercely, but just like so devotedly. Like I need to be so devoted to that energy balance. And so anything that could possibly be considered vocation must be possible for me to express, but also not have to interact and have so much connection and intimacy, because that will burn me out Quite quickly. Quite quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you'd have podcast conversations like these. You would write
Yeah.
a book. So those are some of the glimmers of vocation for you.
I think so. Which it felt like this really elusive thing, and now all of a sudden I'm like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. They're not some of these thoughts are not brand new thoughts I've never thought about before, but like, yeah, it sounds right. It doesn't sound really complicated when you put it that way.
Mm-hmm. Money complicates it.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, so yeah, and the grass is always greener is what's coming to me. On your side of the fence, being deep in vocation that is entirely married to money in every way, shape, and form because you're an entrepreneur and you have this business. What lives there in that intersection?
Okay, so I remember leaving my corporate job, and at the building I used to work in was I've told you this story before, Michelle, but the building I used to work in was all glass, like ceiling to floor, all glass. And going into work every day, I used to have the thought before I left of like, this is literally representative of my glass ceiling in terms of what I could contribute to the world, how I could be of service to the world, how I could self-express here, and even the income I could make. It just completely vocation and wealth and abundance have always been very interwoven for me. Um, and that glass building represented this glass ceiling. And I remember the last day walking out of that building and just this euphoric feeling inside of I am literally shattering this glass ceiling. I'm shattering my own glass ceiling. And now it's both like liberating and terrifying because now I am my own glass ceiling. There's no one giving me raises. There's no one no boss I need to impress. There's no like, I am literally responsible for this now. I am responsible for my own glass ceiling. I'm responsible for my own self-expression in my vocation, and I'm responsible for my own income potential. Liberating and terrifying. And so I think that vocation isolated is not complicated for me.
Yeah.
Vocation isolated, oh gosh, it's so clear. Coaching is vocation to me, coaching and, gosh, being in coaching conversations, teaching coaching skills, like there is nothing complicated or convoluted about that. It is crystal clear. It is pure as the clearest sky. That's what it feels like. But because vocation and money are very much intertangled for me, that's what's caused a lot of my challenges in entrepreneurship. It's this dynamic, like as to your point earlier, the amount of the amount of inner work that I do on a daily basis to get these two things in alignment and right is it's all consuming.
Yeah.
It's if I look at my wheel of life in the last 5 years of years, however many years, especially it was very different. I got to say, entrepreneurship being a coach was very different than an entrepreneurship building a business like the MRA. Different beasts. Being a coach, there was just a simplicity to that business. It was simple. I look back at those days, I'm like, oh, those were simple, beautiful entrepreneur days.
Yeah.
When you build a school, when you build a business and you have employees and you've got hundreds of students and you've got a faculty team and you've got a back end system and you're now a CEO of a business. It's a different beast. It's also got a whole set of new joys and opportunities for self-expression. but that wealth and abundance piece, it's now, it's not just me, it's you, it's other people on our faculty team, it's other that this business supports. And so if I think about the last 5 years of the MRA, and I think about my wheel of life, vocation has been, like, I'm a little ashamed to say this, but 75% of the entire wheel of life, if everything had to equal 100, vocation is front and center, because of how intricately linked it is to money. So I don't know where I was going with all that. Okay, you asked me what it was like. Was that your original question?
Yeah, with money and vocation, totally married.
Completely married.
Yeah.
And so what vocation linked to wealth and abundance? And again, like I think that context is really important, because I don't think this is true especially for people who have that unlinked. But for me, because as an entrepreneur, it's very much linked. Vocation has been the greatest outlet I've ever experienced in my entire life. There's been no greater outlet for me to grow in. This outlet has given me, has required me to look at every shadow, every limiting belief, not just about money, but about other, everything. It has required me to look at and continues to, little shadow, rebel mind, fear, guard energy, everything has come up to be healed and continues to. And I will say it's getting easier after several years of this. It is getting easier. And who I am today is wildly different than who I was, 5 years ago when the MRA began. And so the growth in this outlet, like my personal growth, is like, it's exponential. It's just like, it's exponential. And I think that it has to be, otherwise I would have failed at all of it. I believe that my work as a entrepreneur here is, what am I trying to say? When I do my inner work and I clear my cobwebs and look at my limiting beliefs and dig through things and feel through things and name it, feel it, shift it a million times over, my devotion and commitment to doing that within vocation has rewarded me with wealth and abundance. And so I have this belief that the more I grow here, the more this will grow. And the more true I am to myself and what I actually want, and what I actually want, again, in full self-expression of vocation, is constantly evolving and changing. So what I wanted 2 years ago and how I wanted to fully self-express within the MRA looks different than today. So I have to constantly be asking myself that question, growing into that the wealth and abundance, it's like I have to do that first. And then the wealth and abundance follows in direct proportion to how much I've grown. Am I explaining that?
Yeah. And what you're making me, it's like, I'm getting this picture of, in the outlet of vocation, there's something inherent in the outlet of vocation that includes growth. And it's almost like, if there is no growing edge in the area of vocation, perhaps it's not quite your vocation. Like, if there's no more room for growth, and I don't mean like growth and like, I don't even mean pain or like bad challenges, but if there's no room for growth and expansion, perhaps it's not the direction of vocation.
I like
Um,
that. I
yeah.
think that's true.
Yeah. And it sounds like what you're saying is that, like, as soon as you try to like coast or hang on the work that's come before, eventually the universe is going to be like, no, no, you can't coast on the old ideas. They won't work anymore. And we're going to, and, you know, what made you $1 million before, if it's old news, you can't keep doing it. You know,
Completely.
the rewards for it will not continue coming
No.
um, in order for it to be a prosperous, you know, outlet, you need to continue to meet the vocation where it wants to take you and help you grow.
You just defined what it means to run a soul-led business for me. Like you
Mm.
just whatever you just said, you always have this beautiful way of taking the swirling thoughts in my brain and making it so clear for me. I'm gonna have to re-listen to what you just
Mm.
said. I've always um I've always been a little bit like awe is the wrong word because it's not a good awe. It's just like a how is that possible? When I look at other entrepreneurs, and I'm no one I actually know, no one I personally know, but you know, big like entrepreneurs who make a shit ton of money being completely inauthentic, like using, you know, yucky tactics and just being like, oh, you feel their energy and it's like, oh, but they're wildly financially successful. And I I look at people like that, I'm like, how do they do that? Just like
Mm.
how? How is that? Because my experience has always been because I'm devoted to running a soul-led business, meaning like my soul has to lead. I have to make aligned choices. I whenever I make a misaligned choice, and go down a little rabbit hole somewhere because you know maybe I got like you know some mentorship somewhere that said I had to do this, but it kind of felt yucky, but I did it anyway because this was what you do in business. I don't know. I'm trying to find my way here. The universe has always met me financially in a negative way. It's always impacted me negatively financially. Whereas when I anchor into my soul and I take those solid next steps forward that are in alignment with where I want to go, even though it's completely opposite from what all the mentors are saying, the universe has always responded positively financially. And so, and I think that is the path of running a soul-led business when vocation and money are intricately connected like that.
Yeah. I I bet you it's also true not just for money, but I bet you it's occurring to me there's other ways to be mirrored in vocation, you know, like along the growth path, and one of them being money, prosperity. So the growth
Mm-hmm,
path of
mm-hmm.
vocation, you're like stepping into the next version of whoever it's calling you to be, to feel authentic and expressed. You know, in some places maybe it's not money, maybe your vocation is maybe you have a salary that doesn't fluctuate wildly, right? But maybe there's also just, I don't know, it could probably show up in like resistance, like unhappy, like just, you know,
Yeah.
conflict with people around you. Like I bet you there's all sorts of ways, but it's true whether it's
Yes.
money or harmony or, you know, good reviews, bad reviews, whatever it is. I bet you that what you're that basic principle of what you're describing is first it has to be in alignment. You have to do the inner work, you have to grow, you have to step into being who you want to be, make aligned choices, and then the rest follows.
Yeah. And I think there can be, it's almost like in proportion to the, you know, because on vocation and money are so linked for me, there have been like incredible joys
Mhm.
and deep lows. And it's, I think my goal now that, you know, we're entering a stage where there's a natural maturity of business. My goal is just like a little evening out of those, like those peaks and valleys, you
Mm.
know, like a little more stability and um, getting even clearer about what I want to experience in vocation. Because again, that's really different than the like bright-eyed, ready for anything. How I had so when I think about who I was when I created the MRA, oh my gosh, I had boundless energy. I had time and energy and readiness, and I had all this kinetic energy to pour into this, and it was excited and it was impassioned and like I'm different today. What I want is I'm older too. You know, I'm different today. And now it's this question of, well, what do I want to feel in vocation?
Mm.
And so you and I have been having this conversation. So I was really inspired, just to give some background on what inspired this conversation. I was having a mentor call with one of our students, and she, was near the end of our call. We had talked about all the mentorship things, and one thing she was just offhanded, just off the cuff talking about was that she couldn't believe where her life was today and how different it was, like a year ago or however long ago. And one of the examples she was giving me was this relationship that she's in today,
Mm.
this new relationship. And she said, yesterday I was actually looking at the list I had created of all the things I wanted in a relationship. And then I was looking at this new man in my life and and thinking, oh my gosh, check, 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 check. It's all there. And I was just so inspired by her story. And I got off that call and I think I Voxered you right away. And I said, because we were having this conversation about vocation, it just struck me, we should make a list. What do we want to feel? Just as if it was a relationship, just as if we were calling in a soulmate relationship. What's our list for vocation? And they're going to be very different. Both of our lists are very different. But what is our list for vocation? And it's interesting because I've spent hours and hours and hours and hours journaling about vocation and all the things in my vision statement, but I'd never sat down and wrote a list out. It felt different. Um, so I know you've completed your list. You want to read it?
Yeah, okay. I was rereading it before our conversation, and I love my list. It all feels very true. Um as with many things, it also feels a little vulnerable and exposing, but I love it. I love my list. Okay. Okay. It's kind of long, actually. Okay. Let's just maybe can we go through them like not as
Mm-hmm.
a whole, but like one by one? Because I
Yep.
feel like I so many of my points have been inspired by yours, and I
Okay.
feel as if some of them will maybe like relate to us both.
Yeah.
One, okay. The first one is okay, this is an interesting one. I feel so financially valued, supported, and nourished that I have no need or any desire to look elsewhere to satisfy my financial needs. And so the energy of this is like, I really thought about the energy of an actual relationship. And I think about the contrast between all my previous relationships to my relationship now. And in all my previous relationships, there was always something a little missing. So it always had me wondering like about an ideal partner who wasn't the person I was with. And I think about the way I am now and like, not an inner or outer eye ever wanders around looking. It's just like, oh, I know that I have what I want. And I want that in vocation also, I want all of my needs, including financial, to be so satisfied that I'm not out there wondering about vocation anymore. You know what I mean? Like, it's like,
Mhm.
oh, everything I want is right here.
Mhm.
Do you have any
I
thoughts on
love
that?
that one.
Yeah.
Um, I'm looking at my list, and yeah, so we were also talking about like, so coming at this list as if it were a relationship we were calling in.
Yeah.
And we've also been talking about um what romance novels have taught us about
Yeah.
what we want to feel and what we want to call in it from this energy of vocation.
Hmm.
And so, like, so much of what's on my list is about safety and security,
Yeah.
and just feeling so safe, feeling so secure, feeling so held. And I think it it aligns to what you like, what you're feeling. You're not there's no wandering eyes. You're not looking elsewhere. You just feel so safely held and protected, and
Yeah.
just like all your needs are taken care of here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I want. It makes me feel so like happy when you say that. It's exactly what I want.
Yeah.
Okay. This one I have written a certain way, but okay, I'll just read how I've written it. Um, I am and feel valued for my quality as opposed to any sort of quantity.
Mm,
So it's really about my value is about who I am, who I'm being, not about what or how much I'm doing.
mhm,
That feels really soothing on my nervous system. Again, like in my relationship, it's like who I am that is cherished, not like how many dishes I do or what, like
mm,
it's not about, none of that comes in. It's like, just who I am. And just if I sit there looking pretty, I'm adored, Like I love that energy.
mm. I love that energy too. That feels luxurious and radiant. I love that.
Mm. Yeah, me too. Okay. Should I keep going?
Yeah, you keep
Okay.
going.
Um, I am and feel completely free. I always and only turn towards my work with desire, never out of compromise, obligation, or responsibility. So it's a true, like, again, just as exactly in like a relationship, I don't, it, it's, it's only ever with a desire to turn in that direction, which feels so liberating. And there's like this paradox that feels so clear to me in relationship that uh, I would like to find in terms of vocation and just the idea of work, because I can truly say in my relationship, I am never doing anything because I need to because it takes work or I need to maintain it, or when people say relationships take work, I don't relate to that. But if you
Mhm,
actually watched my behavior, you would see that I am pouring a lot of energy in. It's just I'm never ever ever doing, oh, well, to keep a relationship strong, I should really do these things, or like my partner would really like this and it's important to do. Never. There's so much, it's just absolute freedom, and mixed with this certain type of commitment and devotion, but it's like the commitment and the devotion always comes from desire and truth, and it's just the desire seems to, for every time I check in with myself, the desire is still there, and that's what is true, and it almost feels like I'm just lucky that that is the case, and sometimes I marvel, wow, it's still true that this is what I want. And I'm almost not surprised, but it's a delight to discover this is truly what I want. And um, it's never because I should, it's never because this is the work you need to do. I want that to be true in vocation as well, that it just so happens. This is what I desire to
mm.
pour in. And
Do you think that I think back to, okay, so what you're saying makes so much sense to me in this phase of my life as a entrepreneur and a creative. And but if you were to have said that to me, if I was listening and I was back in my 9 to 5 job, the gap would be so, I'm like, yeah, your words sound wonderful, but that reality is so far from I can't even compute it. I don't even know if I have a question, but more like I know for you a 9 to 5, that has never been a system that you could ever, you full time even is not even a system that you could ever exist in.
Yeah. Well,
Like
I
you're
tried and I went into some extreme burnout and depression.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Do you think that, I don't know, it's like making me question, like, do you think that does just doing things because we desire it, do you think that's possible as an employee in a job? Like, do you think that's possible?
I don't know. I I've never experienced even a hint of that energy until working with you. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like the the this is gonna probably feel really shitty for anyone listening who's like struggling with this, but I think that I have probably found the most freedom of everything, of timelines, expression, you name it, of like anyone who is an employee, like working for you. And like, and is this common or does that exist in a lot of like roles for employees? Probably not. Probably not. Like, I don't think there's many people out there. I don't know. I'm sure other like unicorn places exist, right? Where there's like a lot of freedom of expression. Maybe I shouldn't be so like limited in what I think is out there, but
Mm.
I
Mhm.
I just think that was like such a massive struggle. It was like such a source of
Mhm.
resistance. It was like a maybe I'm like coloring the world with so much like restriction because that's just what I've experienced so much
Right.
of.
Right, right, right.
So I have experienced a lot of restriction, a lot of like, how the hell are people supposed to make money and survive being in conditions where someone's telling you to do something you don't want to do and you want to scream and you fantasize about quitting? I used to fantasize about getting like hit by a car and going into the hospital.
Yeah,
I
I've
used to
had those fantasies
fantasize
before.
I used to fantasize, but not just like once or twice. It's like I would be like, I would fantasize about being sick. I would fantasize about getting severely ill because I was just like, anything but this. I hate this. So that was my struggle. That's been my struggle. Like, and I think, and I'm just like, it's the same flavor now, just like much reduced, right? Like, I'm
Mm.
still trying to completely disentangle myself from even a whisper, a hint of that pattern. So my lens has been,
Mhm.
it's not possible out there. I don't think like I really truly don't think that's true. I think it's been my
Yeah.
limiting beliefs and I think a lot of people would resonate with my experience. I don't necessarily yeah, so I think that the more I discover possibilities for myself, probably the more I will see it in the world. I see more possibilities for people now than I ever have. And if you check back in with me in a year, I deeply, sincerely hope I'm like, oh no, guys, I've got good news for you. Everything is possible. Where it can be entirely
Yeah.
free. Yeah, this is
Yeah. I like that. I like that thought. And just as we're contemplating this, I do believe there are places. I think there's more places, but to your point, I think they're hidden gems. But I think there are really beautiful fits
yeah,
for people to fully self-express in vocation in the workplace as an employee.
yeah.
And I think that if we think about the outlet of vocation, again, sometimes we're in a, like the outlet of vocation when you were working a 9 to 5 or when I was working a 9 to 5, where my experience of that is that it's almost like I cleared it and cleaned it up as much as I possibly could. It was like the most amount of self-expression I could do. And I was not miserable. I was just like, I just knew this was my limit. This was my limit. And other outlets where it's just like you're in burnout, your body is screaming, you're wishing you would go to the hospital to have a break or whatever. It's just because that outlet is so it's so dense. There's nothing to get through. There's no self-expression to get through. There's no penetrating that for you.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's a matter of clearing up the current outlet, and sometimes it's a matter of like burning that outlet to the ground and creating a new one, or going to find a new one.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And as you're saying that about fits, I think that's like really important too. There's probably a lot of people who have just found a fit.
Yeah.
I think about like my dad, and he certainly didn't always enjoy his career, but one thing that he always said is he like loved the actual job. He stopped loving it when he kind of like became a manager and had to like manage all these like people's like interpersonal like it was just like, oh, I don't want to do that.
Humans.
It's like,
Humans.
oh, yeah. But he loved his actual job. He loved, he loved his actual job, the actual work. I think perhaps he could even get lost in it and probably didn't, I don't think there was any sense of resistance from putting his head down, doing the actual work and the examinations he had to do. I think he had an interest and was like, ooh, he probably felt free and expressed in that. And yeah, there's got to be a lot of people out there.
There has to be.
Yeah. And why so many of us end up in bad fits through a lot of times in life. Maybe, maybe that's more of, maybe there's all of these like just jobs waiting, and it's like the limiting belief stopping us from being able to see all the beautiful little fits.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for that little tangent.
Yeah.
Okay, keep going with your list.
I like that. Okay. My vocation must bring me as much joy as my chickens.
I love it.
Or else I just need to be a chicken farmer. But I don't really want to go down the full like egg production chicken farmer route, but my vocation must bring me as much joy as my chickens.
I love that.
Because if that's true, I'm going to be such a happy girl. Right? Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. I don't know why this feels like a vulnerable one. My vocation reverently honors Mother Earth and all of her creatures.
Okay, so tell me why that feels vulnerable.
I don't know. I don't even know. It shouldn't. That's really interesting. I don't know. It just, the natural balance of things feels very precious. And all sorts of jobs and work people do and ways people make money upset that balance. And so it just feels like a very precious balance. And so there's a certain type of basic simplicity and integrity I want anything I create to honor. Yeah. I don't know why it's so vulnerable. It just feels feels very precious, very important. And I don't even really know what it means, but yeah.
Do you have an inkling of what that looks like? Like, do you have yeah.
I don't know what it looks like in vocation, but I know what it looks like in that, that center piece in like of the wheel, like me, the humanness. I know what it looks like in terms of, and I don't always get it right, but I can always like, ooh, I'm not like perfect, but I can feel it in terms of like um, where I spend my money, like what I buy, like especially with food, when I'm eating. It's kind of like what systems I'm a part of feeding and fueling. You know what I mean? Like, it feels really good that my chickens give me my eggs, and I'm like, oh, you have such a good life, and I'm feeding you good things, and I'm getting your eggs, and I'm feeding you my leftover food scraps, and like, oh, this is beautiful, this is sustainable, this can go forever. It feels really good, you know? Same even with like when I bake my own bread and that kind of thing. And I'm like bypassing like the packaging and the chemicals in the food and the like way people farm that doesn't, it's, you know what I mean? Like I like getting like wheat from someone who grew it well, you know, like that makes me feel really, really, really good. And when I do those things, I feel like such a deep, important sense of peace. And it's just very important that like whatever I find along the path of vocation, I want to maintain that sense of like balance and peace. And yeah, like I don't, I guess maybe it's just like I don't want anything to upset that really important balance of humanness. Like, you know, and the relation, all of us humans are held by the earth. And if we want our children and grandchildren to keep being held, we have to play our parts in a really mindful way, reverent way, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm, I love that.
Yeah. 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 I could even feel like emotion when I say that.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay,
Okay,
next
tell me
one.
more.
Um, my vocation honors my body. I have the freedom and flexibility to honor my body's unique cycles of rest and creativity.
That's a big one.
That's a huge one.
So what would that look like?
Well, there are certain cycles that are predictable and there are certain cycles that aren't predictable. So not only would I be able to like it's it it's like there's certain amounts of capacity I have in a day, in a week, in a month, in a year. There's certain ebbs and flows, like in my daily energy. There's certain ebbs and flows in other things that I have to do in a week. There's certain ebbs and flows in my month. There's certain ebbs and flows in a year of seasons. And all of those things, all of the, like the lows, all of the places where I'm in a low, those need to be so honored and protected. And I need to not push myself in those lows, but like, you know, hormonally, like in like a monthly hormonal cycle in the day, in like the winter, when I know it's getting dark at 4, it's like, oh no, can't do anything after 4. The light is dim. My body doesn't want to think after 4. You know, I need to. So, so my vocation needs to honor all of those. And even more than that, um, those times that are a bit unpredictable, like when you don't expect, like, you know, we're talking about what, like the type of inner work and inner growth we have to do in terms of vocation
Mm-hmm.
and just in life. And when you're in a, when I'm in like deep in a growing edge or in a death and rebirth, and I am processing my feelings and I'm making space to explore my fears and I'm making space to feel my feelings and I'm, you know, giving myself space to, uh, you know, cultivating the inner space to hear the whispers of my authentic self. That takes energy and you can't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily schedule that in advance. So there needs to be room for me to have those growing edges come in, have enough space and energy to do my inner work. So there needs to be almost like extra flexible space like available. Like when I need to do my inner work, I can do my inner work without feeling like I'm dying inside and I'm so scared and I'm spinning out of control, but I have to do my work because I'm not at my best in those moments, you know? Like
Yeah.
it's very challenging to show up and
Yeah, serve others,
serve.
connect with others, have meetings with others. Uh, when you're feeling, I so deeply resonate with that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. That would be real
the
nice.
space to clear your schedule and to not have to human,
Yeah.
to like tend to yourself. To the process of expansion, the process of growth is like you have to go through those contractions, you have to go through the constrictions. And
Yeah.
it's those constrictions and contractions where it's really hard to human.
Absolutely. And if we're going to consider that in vocation, it's an outlet that will forever be bringing us new growth, then, you and I have both said we've desired more ease. And
Mm-hmm.
so if it's true that we want more ease, and it's true we're going to continue to be challenged, and we're going to continue to grow, and we're going to continue to need to confront our fears and like name it, feel it, shift it, and process our stuff, then the way those two things meet in my mind is, okay, we're not going to say we never want another challenge or we want to stop growing. The ease then comes in with there's actually enough time and space and energy to do the inner work so that it's sustainable. Because,
Mm-hmm.
so we don't burn out in the process of all of this growth. It's like it's growth at a pace that's manageable. And
Mm-hmm.
it requires that that space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
What else?
Um Okay, here's an interesting one. There's the next two are a little bit connected. Maybe I'll say them both. My vocation doesn't require me to chase it or prove myself. It pursues me steadily and firmly. My vocation comes and knocks on my door. And when it finally arrives, it feels almost too good to be true. Okay. And the next one's connected. My vocation makes me feel like I am she who is pursued by all that she desires. My vocation meets me as she who knows her worth and rises to the occasion of meeting all of my needs and standards.
Oh, I love this.
Love it too. It's like I'm asking a lot here. I'm almost like it's like makes me almost like giddy and feel silly how much I'm asking here. But the reason I'm like, no, I'm gonna take a shot and ask it. I'm gonna even it sounds probably like I don't know if it could sound to someone's ears entitled or demanding or like ridiculous, but that same energy of feeling like I am asking for something so ridiculous in this exact energy in terms of relationship, when I took the risk and asked for it, it came. So and I wouldn't trade it for the entire world. And if it's possible in a relationship with another human, what if it's possible in relationship with vocation?
You know what the really, like everything you're saying, and we've been chatting about this, just you and I, for quite a while now. And everything you're saying and everything like you've written down, everything I've written down, oh, it feels so lovely and it feels so good. But the nature of what I know to be true about the process of co-creation with the universe, with life, is that I've never personally experienced anyway in the process of co-creation, that like first my needs will be met and then I can be this. Like first, first the universe will shower me with abundance and safety and all the things, and then I can have ease, and then I can relax. It's the opposite. I have to take the leap of faith first. And so there's there's this period, and we've talked about this before in previous podcasts. We actually read the parable of the trapeze. It's the
Mm.
trapeze swings. It's the in between where you have to take your hand off the old bar and reach for the new one. And there's this period in between where you're in no man's land, and so you're you're claiming what it is that you want, and you're saying no to opportunities or things that aren't in alignment with what you want, which is really scary to do. Like making changes and making new choices is really terrifying to do. But change can't come. Like change comes through our new choices, through our
Yeah.
new decisions. If we're hanging on for this to this bar, making the same choices, the same decisions, but we've got this yearning over here for what it could be, but we're not letting go of the bar and reaching for that new one and hurtling through, time and space for a while, like we can't, change won't happen.
Yeah.
I think I went off on another tangent there.
No, I'm following. Yeah. Yeah.
I think my point was these, I don't know if you called them ridiculous or whatever you called them, or these, but really, are they ridiculous?
I
Like,
mean,
think about it.
yeah, I'm starting to think they're not, but they first occur to me as, am I being silly? You know?
Yeah. It's they are, what are they? They are pure and good and simple and completely unconventional
Mm.
and completely outside of society's norms of what vocation means to most humans in our in like our like North American culture. you know so to some people, I'm sure listening, this sounds like a pipe dream, but when I listen to you, and because I know who you are, and I know that your your body is so sensitive
Mm.
to any form of misalignment outside of you or inside of you. It's almost like your body cannot exist in misalignment for too long.
Yeah.
And I think over the years, it's been more and more fine-tuned so that any form of misalignment outside of you or inside of you, it's just in the slightest misalignment.
Yeah.
It's you probably out of anyone I know, um, like will not and just cannot betray yourself like that.
I can't.
No, you can't.
And many times though, I like it it first usually occurs to me as there's something wrong with me and I'm not good enough, I'm flawed, I'm not strong enough, I'm not resilient enough, I'm not evolved enough, I'm not, because it's, I'm having a problem that it feels like I can't. This feels wrong. I don't like it. And there's a part of me that always says, like, you should just be able to get over it. You should just
Mm-hmm.
be able to like handle it, get over it. And I always fail. And like I always fail. I always fail at it. Oops.
Oh, you got some stuff
Yeah.
happening got some balloons, some confetti happening in your window
Um,
there. Okay, go ahead.
so and that's such a blessing that I've always failed at it. Um, but that's the way it's always occurred to me. It wasn't like a choice. It's not like this noble choice of like, I will not betray myself. This is not how it came about. It's like I am this way. And now I can say that and I can like be like, yes, you're right. I cannot. But it was really not, it's really not a choice that I identified and tried to name and operate that way because of, yeah, some like noble ideal. It's really just I fail at anything else. I fail at it, right? And now I can
Mm-hmm.
see the silver lining of, it's beautiful that I can't continue to operate when there's a misalignment for me, even though sometimes it
Mm-hmm.
feels like I'm failing at something. And same in a relationship. I'm sure I've said this before, but I always like just thought, wow, I'm way too sensitive to be in an intimate relationship with someone else, like, am I just always gonna feel scared? Am I so sensitive that I will always feel scared? And it's just such a flaw in me, and there is no human I'll ever be able to feel truly safe with because I'll always sense something and I'll always be scared. And it turns out it's not true. It turns out just really sensitive to all the little things. And now the peace I feel in when I sense and I'm like, "Oh, it's pure alignment for everything that matters." And like the ease and the peace in my nervous system is just like it is sanctuary. It is true peace, and that is what I really want in all corners of vocation, is that sense of
Mm.
nervous system peace where it's like, "Ah, yes, this is true alignment." So all of those little things where maybe part of my brain is like, "You should just be better, tougher, manage it better," or, "Eh," like, really my work truly is to stop trying and just trust. Just trust. Just trust my body.
And I think that there's a like a surrender piece in there too. There's a um I don't know, I believe that um vocation has also been really intimately tied, not just with wealth and abundance for me, but it's been very intimately tied with spirituality.
Mm.
In fact, I would say, the three of those outlets, spirituality, vocation, and wealth and abundance, are equally intricately tied for me.
Mm.
In fact, vocation is a way I commune with the divine. It's the way I create with the divine. It's um and so the reason I'm just thinking about that is, I think about when you're talking about trusting yourself, trusting your body, doing what feels right, what feels good. The life has an interesting way of bringing the opportunities to us, presenting them to us. Life has an interesting way of, when we get out of its way, of showing us the way forward,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah. Does that mean anything else for you in terms of exactly how you want to navigate your vocation?
I I don't think I actually could. I think actually this link of spirituality, vocation, and wealth for me, and abundance and money, I couldn't. It could I. I could never operate in a realm where it was just vocation and money. Like,
Mm.
couldn't do it. I could not operate in that realm. I have to feel connected to something greater. I have to feel like I'm co-creating with something greater. In fact, when I look at my list, I don't have beautiful sentences like you do. I have words. I feel so safe and secure. I feel so supported. I feel loved and adored. Um, I feel taken care of and protected and free. I feel a partnership, balance, sustainability. And when I say all those words, what I think about is actually like a connection to the divine. I'm not thinking about, when I think about, I want to feel loved and adored, I'm not thinking about, I want to be loved and adored by our students or our alumni or our faculty, or that. I actually don't, that's not what I want. I want to feel loved and adored by like God, what I believe to be God, by the divine, who's co-creating the MRA with me. And I want to feel so supported by this divine energy, and so safe and secure and loved and adored and partnered and balanced. And I want to feel taken care of so that I can be free inside this partnership, inside this relationship of co-creation. And so I think that really and ultimately vocation is an expression
Mm.
of spirituality and co-creation with the divine. And I think that actually is the key to my joy. Like that is full self-expression and vocation is when I truly feel as though I am co-creating with something greater than me.
Mm.
That's the key to that's my purpose.
I love that so much. You saying that actually makes me reframe some of the other things. Like, when I said I want to feel so financially valued, supported, nourished, like all those things. And when I hear you say, I want to feel like loved and safe and, you know, all of those things, I think that's true for me too, that it's maybe not an obvious sense of like, whoever pays me,
Mhm.
whether it's you or clients or some company, like it's not like I need a person to value me or nourish me. It's like, is the
Mhm.
whole endeavor of leaning into this vocation, does it make me feel as if the universe is smiling down saying, yes, yes. You know what I mean? You're doing a good job and you're safe and you're valued and this is good work. It's like, oh, thank you, universe. It's like that's who I want it from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is that that is the only energy that could actually make me feel the words on my list, free and safe enough to rest and sustained. Because, if I think about entrepreneurship and business, I mean, there's daily triggers. Triggers are on the daily.
Yeah.
There's this, there's this, there's this, and you could be triggered 24/7 as an entrepreneur. And so no amount of financial success or no amount of any type of success is going to protect you from those triggers or make it better.
Yeah.
The only thing that I have found that will make it better is if I just trust that and I have this co-creative, dance with the divine or with the universe, and I trust that when a challenge arises, there is a solution forward. I might not be able to see it in this moment, but put it to rest because, like it will become clear and I can pray on that. I can give it up to the divine. I can rest safely knowing that even if there's not a clear solution that I can see, it's coming. Rather than trying to do all the figuring and all the mental work in my head that is a recipe for burnout.
I love that so much. So I want to say something else about it, but it's my body just responds to everything you're saying with relief.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, I love your words.
Yeah. And what if that is the dance, between vocation and spirituality and money? And if it's
Mm,
just this dance.
yeah. I really like that. I really like how you linked the spiritual with the vocation and the um wealth and abundance. It's triangle, isn't it?
It is a triangle.
Hmm.
It is a triangle.
Huh.
We need some kind of new visual is coming for us, or a new system is coming for us. But yeah, yeah.
I'd like us to draw that out and contemplate that further and
I
further
would too.
explorations.
And
Yeah.
I wonder if, we've recently added a third trimester to our coach training, and it's all about building a soul-led business. And I wonder if this is birthing some models, some ideas, some concepts for how to
Oh.
actually teach that.
Ooh, I'm excited. Oh, that sounds
Yeah.
juicy. Yeah. Okay, okay. Is there anything else for you in terms of vocation that's on your list, whether it's actually written down or it's, occurring to you that is important in the outlet of vocation? Just gonna look at mine quickly here too.
I think I've expressed the great majority of it. Is there anything for you?
There's one last little thing here. So there's two that sound like they are contradictory, but they're not. One is my vocation grows with me. My vocation is something I never outgrow. And the other is my vocation feels safe, stable, and trustworthy, steady, and consistent. So it sounds like those are different, but
Mm.
they feel really important. Again, in terms of like when I think about my relationship, I feel like, I'm realizing new things about myself all the time. I decide there's a new version of me who I want to be all the time, different than the person my partner met however many years ago. And what's really wonderful is I feel like it's not even like a feeling or a thought. It's like I know and I'm experiencing that this container of my relationship and this partner, I can just grow so freely and I'm never outgrowing him. It's like, and I really trust I can see all the ways I've grown so far. If it, uh, there's no sense of outgrowing each other. I just feel like, oh, this is a place this can happen infinitely. There's no way I can grow infinitely and we'll never outgrow each other.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in that, there's this sense of like, it is so steady. It is so consistent. It is so stable. And so that consistent, like stable, safe, secure container with maximum growth and expansion and those things living together feels really good because I
Mm.
would never want to feel restricted. I love freedom and I love safety and security. And I love those two things together. It's the most beautiful paradox ever. It's my happy place. Maximum freedom and maximum safety and consistency. I love those things being together.
Me too.
Yeah.
All your words, again, you have such a beautiful way of expressing your words. Y- y- I'm like going off on a tangent now. But throughout this conversation on vocation, how many times the vision of you writing a book out in the woods in a little cabin has
Mm,
flashed before my eyes many times,
mm.
many, many times throughout this conversation. Just wanted to share that. Just wanted to plant that little seed.
I appreciate that. So that hasn't flashed in my mind in this conversation, but the number of times that vision has come to me over the past not even just few years. I remember the first time I had that vision pop in my head. I was in grade like 7 or 8 sitting in my English class. I could picture myself at the desk and the chalkboard and that vision flashed in my mind. And the number of times I've had it since, and something about it always feels so terrifyingly out of reach. And at the same time, it's so enduring. And gosh, I feel like I'm in the process of like cultivating the trust and the bravery to like even keep looking in that direction. There's so many fears. There's so many limiting beliefs. So much. But when we were talking about growth and when you were talking about I forget what you were saying, but it made me think like, oh, that's where the growth is. Oh gosh, that path is where so much growth is for me.
Mm. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Mm,
Okay, well, this was lovely.
yeah.
What's your biggest takeaway from this conversation?
That's my biggest takeaway. I really, really appreciate the reframe. Um, I was in a bit of a struggle for a while, like really the number of times I thought like, am I really just meant to maybe raise chickens? Perhaps could I like, am I meant to just become a gardener slash farmer slash can I invite people onto my trails? Like that's, um, the reframe of separating that out of vocation I find very settling and very freeing. Like I really enjoy the what if that's just my humaning? Like that's part of me as a human who has a relationship with the earth and my body and I really appreciate that reframe and I love that it has subtracted some of the questions I have swirling around vocation and every little bit of clarity, all the little ahas and bits of clarity that came from our conversation, they all point in the direction of exactly what you just said, the image you had of me. Everything points there. And on the one hand, that's like bold dreams, right? On the other hand, it's like I'm running out of places to hide because
I
like the number of times now I've said it to you or on the podcast or someone else, it's like I'm running out of places to hide from facing it and doing it. And I don't ever consciously think I'm hiding. I like to think I'm always like, but gosh, I the subtle, very subtle fear I feel in my body, the subtle limiting beliefs that I feel coming up. It's like there's more in there. And the time seems like it's closing to when all of it really has to be faced and come up and dive in and all signs are pointing in that direction very firmly and it for some reason the direction it's like looking bright at the sun and it's really bright. That's what it feels like. It's like, oh, it's bright and it's beautiful. It's hard to that's okay. It's like, okay, universe, I'm gonna do my best to
Okay, and also just going back to something we said earlier about life, I can't remember the exact context. I think we were talking about it in the context of jobs, where when a work is not yours to do, things will come up and will get mirrored and until you know, and that's true for life. Like if you've got there's this call to adventure here, and that refusal of the call, refusing the call, it can only happen for so long until life will start speaking to you in louder and louder and louder and louder ways. Yeah.
It's so funny how when you hear somebody else resisting the call to their dreams, you can look at them and listen to them and be like, oh my gosh, it is so friggin' clear. I see the path for you. And when it's you, it's so hard to access the same,
Belief.
yes, belief. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the theme? So you don't even have to like name what the things are, like what's on the old trapeze bar versus what's on the new, but what's the theme? What's the theme of what you are reaching for and what's the theme of what you're leaving behind?
Two words: freedom and presence.
Mm.
And that means simplifying a lot of things and letting go of things and simplifying, like really, really simplifying to create more ease. Because with more ease, I am able to be more present. And that's the thing I yearn for the most. Because in presence, when I am present, I am completely and utterly connected to the divine, to my soul, and I'm in my authentic self. And it doesn't matter what's happening around me. If I'm in that energy, I am in full self-expression. But I need space and ease to be able to get there.
Yeah.
And that involves letting go of things, shedding some things, simplifying, taking on less, doing less, saying no more. Those are scary things as an entrepreneur to do. But that's my next trapeze bar. It's not outside of the MRA. It's actually all here. It's just simplifying it.
Yeah. I read a book recently called I forget the whole title, but something about the creative act. It was Rick Rubin. Oh shoot. It's about creativity. It's about the art of creation, whether it's music, paintings, the way you live your life, the way you it's applicable to absolutely everything, from the art of expressing yourself moment to moment to creating physical art
Mm-hmm.
or music. And he had this kind of philosophy, or this principle that he shared, that a work of art is complete not when you've added everything that it needs, but when you've taken away everything that isn't absolutely essential. So when the simplification process is complete, that is when it's in its final form. And that's,
Oh,
yeah, I
you just
know.
give me shivers. I love that.
Yeah,
That's what I want.
yeah,
I'm going to have to, that's a book.
yeah.
I'm going to have to read that book.
It's so good. It's very poetic. It's like every page is its new poetic language that makes you go, oh,
Yeah.
it's beautiful.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you so much for being part of this conversation. If it serves you, take a moment to contemplate what your golden nugget is from this exploration. And if you feel inspired, please feel free to share it with us in the comments of this episode on our YouTube channel. To learn more about the MRA and our renowned flagship Mind Rebel Coach Training Series that begins once a year in the spring, please visit our website at www.themindrebel.com.